In this episode of Paint Society, it is officially paint day. We're gonna teach you all the steps on how to prep your ride and get it fully ready for the paint booth. We're gonna show you how to properly cut in parts and clean the underside of your vehicle so you can do a full rust proofing. We'll also roll out the old mat and clean up our new booth and get our RSX project into the paint lab and show you how to properly tape it off. We'll move through the stages of sealer, mix up our paint, and get our base coat all dialed in. We'll take you through all the process of how to apply glass-like clear coat so you can get finishes just like this. Step 1. Final blocking and sanding. And this is the finish that we left off in on last episode. It's nice and smooth, and I was telling you, you have two options from this point. Your two options, you can block it out and DA it like we've done in previous, or you can just take a DA to it. For me personally, I talked about maybe just taking a DA to it, but I don't want to lose the opportunity to block it out one final time. So instead of using 180 grit, we're going to use a much finer grit, a 320, and we're going to give it a nice basic block. Just going to go over it lightly, remove the orange peel, and then from there we can do the DA sanding in a 500 grit instead of that 220 and get it ready for sealer. And again, we have our hard block and our 320 grit. And again, we're just gonna use those body lines. I'm not doing aggressive sanding here, but I do wanna take the opportunity to just check things out for the last time, see if there's any areas that are just a little bit wonky, a little bit low. And I'm not actually gonna be using guide coat here, really, to be honest. So in some areas where it's actually a little bit darker blue, I can tell where I've already sanded. By this time, there should not be any sort of filling. There shouldn't be any sort of hammering and dollying. However, if you see something, you're gonna have to go back and fix it. But by this time, you should have already done all the work that you have needed to do to get it. So all you're gonna be doing is just giving it a gentle 320 blocking. We're not getting aggressive, and that's all there really is to it. We're taking the opportunity, once again, to give a final flattening to it. And if you guys just have your regular car there, you just want to make it look good, you can take your second primer and just go ahead and you can just DA it with a soft interface pad to get it ready for paint. I always prefer to prime stuff at least twice. One with that more high build primer, and then second with that surfacer primer. That's just going to give me a nice smoother finish. And there's a few different ways you can do it, but this is the way that I have found to work the best for me. Again, when you're in this quarter panel area, larger areas, try to take the whole length of the actual area and sand it. That way you don't stop in the middle and create some sort of wave there. Believe it or not, with blocking, you can cause waves if you don't do it properly. That's why it's so important to try your best to do it in an X pattern so that you can sand it down evenly. And this is exactly what I'm saying. I'm sanding it down and I'm seeing there's a little spot here that's still a little bit dark. So I sanded with 320 and I can see here, I'm really sanding aggressively. I'm not taking any chances. I don't want to get this car all painted and then I see like a little bit of a wave right there. I gotta do what I need to do. Even if I feel like I'm taking a step back, I'm not. Taking a step forward so I don't have to redo this. This is the time to do it. Don't feel ashamed if you missed it. I missed it. This is what this is for. I don't think I would have seen that if I was using a DA sander. I would only caught it really with the blocking. So blocking is probably going to be the best thing even in the final stage. I'll have to go back and reprime this, but it's no big deal. I'm going to move on to the other side. Now while that glaze is drying, we're going to move over to our driver's side, and we're going to be looking even harder for any of those low spots. I mean, like, you never really know when you're gonna find something. You can do all the work in the world and then something on your last minute can pop up. But I'd rather it pop up now than pop up when we're going to paint it. And one thing also, if you feel like your sandpaper is not cutting anymore, never feel bad. Don't try to save the sandpaper, just go and change it. With a fresh piece of sandpaper, when it cuts properly, you're gonna get a nice, smoother finish. Now all the sandpaper I'm using, I'll put it in the description. I actually like Eagle abrasives. It's a better alternative to the 3M that I'm using here. It's a little bit cheaper, but more efficient. I think you guys will like it if you guys go ahead and give it a try. Now you'll be amazed of all the work that you're actually doing to get this ready for paint, and then when you go to paint it, how quick it actually is. But if you don't put the time in to properly get it sanded down, then you're not going to have the proper paint job, and you're not going to be happy about it. Another thing I won't do is to force a block in an area that it's just not meant for it. This little skinny 3M block, part of the kit that I put in the description, really is good for small areas just like this. It can really conform easily to the areas that are a little bit tinier and don't have a lot of surface space. And you can put a nice firm push on the sandpaper and get it to block nice and even. Now when it comes to sanding and primer drying, I allowed this primer to dry for a good 2 weeks. Now, we really didn't have a chance to hop back onto this project, but that 2 weeks was well worth it because that primer has shrunk. And when it shrinks, you don't have to worry about down the road it shrinking after paint. So a good idea, if you're working at home, let your primer go ahead and dry. Keep it out in the sun for a couple days and let it really shrink into all of the sand scratches underneath. Now on this side over here, remember the other side we had an issue, so we're gonna make sure that we're really following and paying attention. This is actually blocking out completely different, completely flat, nice and easy. I'm noticing a huge difference on this side compared to the other side. If you see something, don't question it. Probably trust your gut, it's probably something there. If you can see it in the primer, you're gonna be able to see it 10 times more when it comes to the paint. And again, that skinny block just really works in those tight areas. You wanna try to do as much as you can when it comes to cross-hatch patterning, sanding. So one way and then the other, you're gonna get the most level, flat surface there is. And I'm gonna repeat a lot of things I say in the video because if you don't watch the video thoroughly, you might miss it. So it's good to watch it thoroughly because everything I say once, twice, or 3 times is probably gonna be the most important thing you're gonna wanna listen to. And again, changing my paper and cross-hatching all the way in this area. These are the type of areas that you're gonna see the most when you get into the car. You're gonna see right where the A pillar meets the B pillar into the C pillar. And man, there's one thing I don't wanna see, and that's a dent or a wave when I get into my car. Now, a paint job like this is gonna take a long time to do. We're talking about maybe 3 months, and that's not working every day. But let's be honest, when you're working on a paint job, there's other things that get in the way, and it's hard to stay motivated. But sometimes that motivation or lack thereof motivation really can help because the product, when it sits longer and it dries, it's actually better for the vehicle. Let's just not let it dry too long. Let's get our projects done within a timely time frame. And we're using the round 3M block that comes in the kit, and I really love this kit because it comes with so many blocks you can use. And we're connecting the C pillar to the quarter panel, and there's that curve here that we really can't put any sort of flat block in, and we don't want to use our hands to sand it because we can put like little finger marks in it or little low spots. And you can still use that cross-hatch pattern with this block and get a really nice sand. You can see how, even though this is just a surfacer, it's really still powdering up pretty well. And again, the surfacer is really for the last and final stages. It's not gonna be a high build primer. It's just gonna be going on there to get you ready for paint. And that's just what we're doing. That gray was a high build. You can really sand it and level off areas. This is just for paint preparation. And with this area completely blocked out, let's head over to the passenger side. Let's block out that filler so we can get a little primer back on it. I'm back here on this filler. This is glazed, so it's very fine. We're gonna be using that smaller block here, about a 6-inch block with 180 grit. And now it's easy to put low spots around your filler, so you gotta be careful. You wanna cut this hard, but you don't wanna use an 80 grit. 80 grit's a little bit too aggressive. The main thing is you wanna not create an issue here. You want to block it about a couple inches past the area in which it was going to feather into the original primer work. You can see here glaze really does sand well, to be honest. and that's why we're using it here. It's not necessary for a body filler necessarily. The glaze is very smooth and will fill in just low spots, and that's just what we have here. So we're gonna go ahead and get this thing sanded, and then we'll go ahead and get it primed. So we'll finish this off here most likely with a 220 or 320 grit, whichever you feel. 320 is probably a better option, and then we'll go ahead and get this primed up. And we got the 320 here, and you always finish off with a DA because it leaves a finer grit scratch. Now we're here on the roof, and we're gonna be sanding the roof again with 320. Now I was really confident the roof's gonna be nice and smooth because when we did the original blocking of it, I really didn't see anything. But again, we don't want to assume, so let's go ahead and get that roof in that 320 grit scratch, and let's use our eyes to visually look and see, hey, do I see any shiny spots? Now you can still use the guide coat here, and I always do suggest using the guide coat. It's just that I have a lot of experience, and I can tell when there's an area that might be a little low just by looking at the original primer. If that dark primer, and it's true for any color, is still sitting in a low spot and it's not sanding out, then don't let it fool you, okay? That is a low spot, okay? Don't think, God, it doesn't matter. If you're looking for perfection, then this is exactly what you need to do. You need to put the time in. Now, I touched on it before, and I'll touch on it again. That high build primer, the difference between a high build and more of a surfacer, high build is thick, meant for blocking, okay? The build is much thicker. Surfacer is just that end primer, that last primer you're gonna use before you go ahead and get it painted. Now, if you have a car really doesn't really have much damage, let's say a car that was keyed, or let's say just a color change with not many dings or not that much body work, you can jump right to the surfacer primer. The high build is generally going to be a little bit thicker. It's going to be a little bit tougher to sand in some cases, not all cases, but the surfacer is going to go on a little bit smoother, and it's going to sand a little bit smoother because it's a preparation for paint. So that's kind of the difference between those two. All right, we're just finishing up that last stage here like we did on the driver's side, using that rounded block and kind of connecting the two. Now everything here is in 320, so everything here is gonna get refined once more with the DA, but since we had a little roadblock with that filler area, we're gonna finish up here first, and then we're gonna go ahead and prime that. We're gonna wait a couple days, get that sanded down, and then ready for paint. Now we're gonna go ahead and get this primed up. Now after the body of the car was primed up, we moved on to the doors following the same exact technique, bouncing between the wider and the thinner block with a P320, making sure that we really get everything completely blocked out. We followed the same procedure on every single part that we had, whether it was the fenders, doors, the body, everything was followed the same exact procedure. Now this procedure really takes a long time. It took us about 3 days to completely block everything smooth, but in the end result, we'll see at the end of the video, it really came out good and really nice and smooth. It's always important to follow up your blocking with a DA sander and an interface pad, exactly what we have here. This is a P500, but you could also use a P400. A P400 will be a little bit more aggressive. It will cut better, but it'll leave a little bit more of a rougher scratch, which is fine as well. So between P400 and P500, you'll be fine. On the back side, I used a piece of 320 and got into all the little crevices and little deep areas and sanded it nice and clean. On the back side, you're going to have to use your fingers and some maroon scuff pads to really get into these tight areas, and you'll be fine since it's not an area that will be flat or be wavy. You just want to make sure it's all scuffed up so that when you go to put the sealer down, it can lay down, and then your base coat and clear coat will follow nice and smooth as well. Once you have everything DA sanded, you're going to want to use some water and clean off the panels using a maroon scuff pad, as well as some scuff stuff paste. Now, we did the same process on all the car parts and even the vehicle. The scuff stuff is a little abrasive and it cleans as well. So all that dust that's inside of the panel, you're going to wipe it and wash it all completely out. So when it hits the booth, you don't have any of that powder still in the vehicle, and you'll get a much nicer, cleaner job. I always suggest washing your vehicles before it goes into the paint booth, before final paint job, or any part that you're painting. You just get a much nicer, cleaner finish. And the scuff stuff really does a good job at continuing to scuff, since it has an abrasive to it, and clean as well. You can see here the fenders were blocked out, and we're just doing the following stages here by getting everything nice and cleaned up. I'm back here after 3 days, and I'm gonna go ahead and get this sanded down. Let's see what it looks like. And look at that. Now we don't have any spots that are low. Everything completely sanded. We can see it didn't cut through at the edges. And that's what you need to do sometimes, taking a little bit extra time to make sure that everything's blocked out thoroughly. Now, again, once you've got everything completely blocked out, you need to follow up with the DA sander and the interface pad on either a 4 or a 500 grit if you are sealing. And if you're not sealing, you should probably be doing between a 600 and then a 800 grit scratch. But since we are sealing, we can go a little bit more aggressive to get that fine scratch really nice and smooth, so that we can put our sealer on there. You can see there's so much work when it comes to refining that scratch, and that's exactly what we want to do here. Even in the jams, we're doing it by hand, but we always like to follow up, at least in the jams, with a maroon scuff pad, and that way it's a little bit more smoother than the aggressiveness of a hand scratch. Everywhere is completely sanded on this vehicle where there was primer, so when we lay the sealer down, it's going to be a beautiful foundation for our sealer base and our clear coat. Moving on to the hood, we chose a new hood as well, and we did a P320 on this factory primer. I don't suggest blocking out any brand new factory parts. All you need to really do is scuff up that primer and remove any sort of defect that might be in that primer, and a P320 is just the perfect grit on an interface pad to do it. We're using the Milwaukee sander, and it's great. It's electric sander. It's new to the game, and boy, it has really been a big game changer for me. We were ready to then paint the underside of the hood. Now this is our dot hood with a clear template on the top of that sticker that you can peel off after painting. We're going with the same exact color but used as a sealer, which we'll see in the ending of the video before we do the base coat application. This is a sealer, and it goes directly over the Honda unsanded E-coat or Honda primer. There's no need to sand in your jams or to sand on the underside of the hood, and frankly, it comes out much cleaner when you don't have to sand and get dust and dirt in all these crevices. So that's just what we did. We followed the manufacturer's specifications, and we went ahead and sealed our brand new part. And from there, it was good enough to put our base coat right over. Now, this is the first time that the Vivid Blue is hitting this hood, and boy, does it look good. I really wanted this underside of the hood to really be shiny, but it will be covered with an insulator. So let us know down in the comments if we should keep it shiny or if we should cover it back up with the hood insulator that covers about 75% of this hood. I've always liked things to be a little bit more factory OEM plus, making it a little bit more better than the factory did, and that's just what we did by putting clear coat on the underside of this hood. Originally, this never came with any clear coat on the underside of the hood. Between the jams on the hatch and the jams on the doors, there was just basically dry overspray, and that's all you really got. Now we're taking a step further and putting gloss where gloss has never been before on this vehicle, whether it was white, blue, or any other color this vehicle came in. We're putting a nice shine on it that will last the lifetime of the vehicle and be much easier to clean off when it comes to cleaning your car and waxing and detailing. We went ahead and cut in the underside of the tailgate as well, because we want to paint just the outside at one time when we paint the rest of the car. You can see how nice it looks. So let's know, should we put the insulator back on or just leave it as is? Step 2, rust proofing. Now, if we can rewind time just a little bit, Mike and his team from AHC Garage wanted to make sure that the underside of this vehicle was completely clean. So they used a degreaser and a shampoo foaming soap to really get into every little crevice of the vehicle. We're going to be doing a full scrub underneath the vehicle to get all the contaminants, all the dirt, grime for over 20 years that's been sitting on the underside of this vehicle. This is the first time that this vehicle has ever received a nice scrubbing on the bottom side, and there's a reason for it. We're going to put a rust-proofing paint on this vehicle, and we're going to make sure that this vehicle will never have any sort of contaminants of rust, and it will encapsulate any sort of surface rust that is still on the vehicle. We'll be showing you here the product in a little bit that we'll be using from Eastwood. But first things first, Juan and the team got everything nice and cleaned up. They spent hours trying to get every little bit of dirt off the bottom side of this engine bay and the bottom side of the vehicle, and boy, did it turn out really good. This is something that is completely optional, but if you really want to take your paint job to the next level and have absolutely no sign that it was another color, then this would be the right way to do it. I don't want to have any sign on this vehicle was ever white, and frankly, there's not a whole lot of white other than their rear rails, which we'll address here in a little bit, but I wanted to make sure that it would look completely factory and a little bit more better than that. So we removed the exhaust and we got right to work after that. We're using an Eastwood Rust Encapsulator Plus. Now this stuff will go over scaled rust, anything, and will basically cut off the oxygen for any penetrant into the actual metal to continue rusting. Now we didn't have any real rust honestly on the bottom side of the vehicle, but I thought it'd be pretty cool to paint the whole bottom side of the vehicle black. And that's just what we did. Now this comes in the actual spray can, or you can roll it on, like say if you have a chassis or something like that with really thick rust and you just want to stop the rust. You'll find a lot of the control arms and suspension components will have some scale rust on it. That's just on the exterior of it, and it's not really affecting the part. So we did good to wire brush those up and clean them up and then spray this on. I also a little carelessly sprayed the rear rails, but it was all good because in the end we were able to come back and clean it up, and we also used a little bit of the rust encapsulator around the rear rails, and look at the end result here. It really came out good once it was all masked up and the overspray was cleaned up. This looks like a factory job, a OEM plus factory job. You can look and see how nice those rear rails came out in vivid blue. You would really be tough to find any white on this vehicle after everything has been completely done. You can see the tunnel here we left OEM. The seam sealer was never coated from the factory. And that's just a nice little touch that we wanted to leave on the vehicle. Step 3. Paint area cleaning. Well, we're all ready for paint, but our paint booth is not. If you take a look at the floor, it's really dirty. So whether it is your at-home paint booth or your paint booth at the shop, if you want a perfect job, you're gonna wanna put the work in to get this all nice and cleaned up. Now, thank God for Like 90. They're coming through. We're gonna put their green pig mat on the floor, get it all changed out. We're also gonna be using their whiteout product on all the walls. It's already on there. It's a peelable dip. You can apply it 2 to 3 times to build up a thickness so you can pull it off. Thank God we have room just to put on one more coat, and at special end, we're gonna show you a little treat that we're gonna put on the walls to get an even cleaner job. Let's go ahead and get this thing renovated before we bring that car in. Now we've been using Like 90 products for the last few years, and let me tell you how great they are. We're using their whiteout product. It's a peelable paint, and you can apply it 2 to 3 times and then peel it off and reapply. We're giving it a light scuff before we do so. And I also picked up a really cheap Amazon throwaway paint sprayer that I could coat the whole entire booth really quickly. Now, once we got everything completely coated, it really came out good. Now, you can apply this coating up to 2 or 3 times and then peel it off. Now, we waited for it to dry. It takes about a couple hours to dry, but we came back the next day and we're going to be using a new coating right over this, which is a tack coating. Now, this product that we're using is a Like 90 product. It's called Turbo Tack, and it basically goes right over the whiteout. Now, you're going to want to make sure to put this only in areas where you're not going to be around. For instance, the booth box and the hose and areas you have contact with the wall, do not put it. But anywhere else where there's no contact with the wall, you're going to want to put this stuff. It's going to really attract lint or anything that might be kind of just airborne in the booth. It will go ahead and attract it and keep it on the wall. And you can apply this with the spray gun. I didn't use the Amazon gun, which was really meant for much thicker paint, like that peelable dip coating that we have from Like 90. This was just a really quick application, and it really was about maybe 20 minutes and really effective. You can see here I did a little test once it was done, and I wanted to really show you on camera. I used a little piece of plastic, and you can see how it just sticks to the wall, but even more so when you go to pull it off, you can see there's some resistance. When you go to pull this off, it just doesn't come. See how it's kind of tacky to the wall? And this is the best way for me to show you. It just really takes anything airborne and it will hold it, which is what you want. Now, when that was all done, it was time to use the scraper. And we're scraping up not only the paint that we oversprayed onto the glass, but all the overspray that's been there for the last several months that's accumulated on the glass. This is a good way to go ahead and scrape it off. Now once that was done, it was time for the final carpet, which is the Like 90 green pig mat. This particular color is exclusive to Like 90, the green pig mat, and it really does look good in the booth. And now once we got it all set up, it was very easy. All you got to do is roll it out and cut it. Just make sure previous to rolling it out that your floor is completely blown out and you don't have any dirt or debris sticking to the floor or on the floor, because it will not hold down. Now once you get it on, there's some unorthodox ways to get it to stick, but it's not a problem. Once you get it all rolled out, we're going to follow it up at the seams with some green tape, and that is really all there is to this stuff. And the maintenance on this Like 90 pig mat is super easy. In the beginning of the day, all you gotta do is vacuum it out if you want the cleanest job. I've gone a few days without vacuuming or blowing it out and still get really nice jobs. Now the point of this pig mat is to hold down the dirt, right? If it was just a cement floor, then it would just sit on top of the actual floor itself, but the actual pig mat holds the actual lint or whatever it might be in the actual surface of the pig mat, and that keeps it on the floor and not in your paint job. And there's some other things we're going to show you that are going to help to get the most perfect and most cleanest paint job possible, but this is all a part of it. Now once it was all done and we changed the filters, this was a laboratory that was ready for paint. And the cool thing about this Like 90 pig mat is you can use it anywhere. You don't need a paint booth. You can put it in your garage or your shed or your barn or wherever you're painting, and it really does keep down the dust. Now the car was all ready. As soon as we were done, we pulled it right into the booth. We didn't want to waste any time. We want the cleanest possible job, so we took the vehicle and we are going to put it towards the front of the booth and put our accessories towards the back, like the doors and the fenders. Step 4, taping the vehicle. Well, we're finally here. The car is all in the booth, and I want to give you a lot of good tips in order to really get a good tape and a clean job. You can see before we brought this vehicle into the actual shop, we blew it all down. We actually wiped it all down first with the water-based cleaner. So this doesn't have any dust on it at all. Now the one thing that is going to be your biggest tool is literally just feeling it, and you need to feel it bare hand, because you're going to feel some things that need to be sanded. And we went and felt every little crevice and made sure there's no rough edges or anything like that, because to the eye you're never going to see it, but to the finger, to the touch, you are definitely going to feel it. So very, very important. You can see what we're doing is back masking again. In order to try to get as much painted as one time, we had to organize the booth in such a way, and I reached out to my buddy Candyman, and this is what he basically told me to do. He didn't want me to paint the hood on the car, he wanted it off the car, but we don't have enough room to do that, and I want everything painted at one time. Everything painted at one time is going to yield a better result. Now, other than the hatch, it's going to get painted at a different time, and the bumpers, the whole body is going to look exactly the same. So we have the hood here, brand new OEM hood that we touched on earlier, that's sanded in 320, and what Juan has done is gone around and he's done a back masking to all of the edges. Since everything is removed, this is a back masking, and what's best is when you do a job like this, you don't have to worry about pulling tape off or anything like that after you've gone and sprayed it, because this is proper refinish, so there's nothing that's going to be up against the actual paint itself. So everything is back masked. We're going to finish up the back masking process basically by flipping that tape on its back side, and then we'll be able to pull plastic over that and it will be good to go. Now over here at the doors section, before we get back masking more, we'll get everything nice and sanded. You saw that we washed everything. Everything's good for a full refinish. And we have our similar parts next to each other. And we've got our fenders at the far end of the paint booth. And the reason why I talked to Candyman, he told me, well, guess what? All the overspray is coming this way, and it's going to be pouring onto the fender. So take your smallest part, put it near your exhaust. That way, if you have to redo it or re-clear it, it's not a door and it's definitely not a whole vehicle. It's just a small fender. So that's a great tip that I learned that you guys can use. And man, this thing is looking good. Now, if you really want to tighten up that plastic, you can use a heat gun and make little tight spots. You got to be careful though. I've already started here, and see how tight this got? It's so nice because it keeps the paper, plastic from flopping. But if you get too close, it happens in a second. So you got to be a little bit careful. But I'll just kind of show you here on the other side. Now, it's not 100% required, but it does help from flopping. So if you just go a little bit, you can make a little tight spot, and that will help bring the plastic in a little bit, and that will help again with just any sort of flopping of the plastic. Step 5, cleaning. We are now ready for the cleaning process, the most important part of the whole entire process of the vehicle. You can see we have the paint booth all clean, or your garage all clean. Now the vehicle must be clean. We spent months and months working on this vehicle. Why would we rush this step? There's 2 types of cleaners you're going to use. The first is a water-based cleaner. For you guys at home, this is Spray glass cleaner. You can get it at the store. For professional use, it's Auto Prep, Ultra Prep, Surface Cleaner, and Sikkens. Now, every paint line has a water-based cleaner. Water-based cleaner removes smudges from your fingerprints or some sort of industrial fallout, something that fell onto the panel from the environment, anything like that. Now, this vehicle's been primed, so there's nothing that's gonna fall on it, but our fingernails and the oils in our fingers, this is going to remove. Now, I put it into the Paint Society pump sprayer. Now, these are available as well as the merch. If you want to support the channel, you're gonna find me wearing merch, using the pump sprayer, and also the paint suit. Go ahead and check out the link in the description for all the products, and if you want to support the channel and get the cool apparel. Now, what I use for cleaning is the microfiber roll. Now, you can easily get these at Walmart. 75 sheets for 15 bucks. The price hasn't gone up in years. I'll also link in the description on Amazon, but it's a little bit more pricey on Amazon. So if you want to go to your local Walmart, you can find these as well. Now, the way that you want to do it is you must saturate the panel. Now, the cool thing about these pump sprayers is that they can hold up to the harsh chemicals used in the auto body field. So if you're thinking, I'm just gonna go get a cheap Home Depot garden one, it will work about 1 or 2 times, and then what's gonna happen is all the seals will break down. So when you do this, you wanna do your best you can to wipe it in one direction. That way you're not swirling around any sort of contaminants. I mean, you might not wipe it one direction perfectly, but wipe it in one direction. Also, another thing you want to do with any cleaner that you've got is you don't ever really want to allow it to evaporate on the surface or dry on the surface. So I always like to take another dry one and kind of go over it again and get about 95% of it off, so that it just dries in a few seconds rather than sitting there and drying, because that can create, believe it or not, some sort of contamination issue if you have some sort of film on the surface of the panel. So guys like to use solvent cleaner first. That's the other cleaner we're going to be using. I like to use water-based cleaner first. And for me, the reason is very, very simple. Water-based takes a little bit longer to dry. And with water-based, I'd rather the water-based get a second chance at wiping. When we come back here and do the same exact process with the solvent, any little, let's say, water base that has kind of gone into the cracks, we'll get another re-wipe using the new towels and the solvent process. So with this, again, as best you can, and by one direction, it can be one direction back and forth, just not all over the place. And then what we're also doing is we're looking at the panel for the very last time. You have a chance to find something on the panel, so make sure that you're thoroughly looking at it. Sometimes when the panel's a little bit wet, we can see things that we can't see when the primer's dry. And again, always remember to saturate it. Do not rush anything in a process of painting. All right, you want everything to be as clean as possible. Now, any of these burn-throughs that you do see on the actual panel itself are burn-throughs to the primer, and if there happen to be a little small burn-through to the metal, which is gonna happen, I've already used a pre-treatment wipe for those. That way we don't have any sort of issues. If you got a burn through the metal, you wanna get something like that, either etch or a pre-treated wipe for acid, to make sure it's it's all protected. All right, there we go. So go ahead, we'll get everything else cleaned up on here, and then we're gonna introduce you to the solvent cleaner. Next up is gonna be the solvent cleaner. Now the solvent cleaner is gonna be more for like grease and wax. This car has been in and out of the shop, and some of the technicians have touched it while fixing up a couple things, and I've touched it, I've touched other things. So this is gonna be the last step cleaner. Now this is M600 in the Sikkens line. Now I will tell you, this solvent cleaner is readily available in most any paint brand, even on Amazon. So I'll link that from Clean Strip in the description. Now with this stuff, you put it on wet like a mirror almost, and then you're gonna wanna wipe it off. It will dry a little bit quicker, but you wanna make sure you get it completely off in the same fashion. Now this is all with new rags, guys. New rags every time. Any of the old rags that have been used, I no longer reuse those ever again for cleaning a vehicle. I'll turn them into just regular shop rags to clean up grease and different things like that. So everything gets used until it can't get used, and then once it's used too much, it'll be used to clean up like a Bondo spreader or something like that. So always use a new rag. If you're going to use a higher quality rag, you can wash these rags, but make sure you're washing them in degreaser. You can throw them in a washing machine with degreaser. Do not throw them in a washing machine with any sort of detergent, because that will cause fish eyes if it transfer to this type of rag. So if you're using some sort of, let's say, Downy or Special Care scented, fresh laundry detergent, flowers, those all have added scents to them, and what that can do is it will transfer to the rag. So you gotta think of everything. And I've said it time and time again, never ever be in a rush to paint. Always take the time to do a quality job. In the production line, it's a little bit different. You know, those jobs for the most part are gonna be ready to go, but when you're painting a whole car, there is a lot that can go wrong, so you don't want to overthink it, okay? You already know what to do. Just do what you need to do, same procedures every single time. You're gonna land a job that you're really, really proud of, and I think I'm gonna be really proud of this one. And as we finish up on our doors, again, making it completely wet. You wanna get it completely wet like a mirror first, and then you can come from here and you can wipe it. And you can wipe it again in one direction the best you can. I've been guilty myself of saying one direction and kind of being a couple different directions, but this is best practices usually yield best results possible. The last step before spraying, we're gonna use a Like 90 particle control. This is a dust control, basically. It's gonna go on a floor, and what Juan has done already was we put it into this Milwaukee electric pump sprayer, and this pump sprayer will basically spray it on nice and even and quickly. And what you would do is you would do this right before a paint job or in the beginning of the day, and you just spray it on, and this is gonna help keep the actual particles on the ground. Remember, we have the sticky, well, I don't wanna touch it too much, because it will transfer, but we have the sticky walls, and then now we're gonna have the dust particle control on the ground. And you can even go onto the bottom of the stands just a little bit, and that will keep dust on the stands as well on the bottom. So he'll continue that same process. This is just the last step in a clean environment. You can see that we've taken, so many steps to get the best possible outcome. And I really feel like this is gonna come out nice and clean. And that's the name of the game, clean, clean, clean. So getting everything nice and clean, because as a painter, there are things you can control and there are things you can't. Cleaning is definitely one that does not require any skill or experience, just something that you can control to get the better possible job. Step 6, sealer, also known as wet-on-wet primer. Next up, we have our sealer application. We have the blue on the vehicle. Now, before it got mixed up with these two for primer that we've been doing on the actual vehicle and sanding. Now this is a sealer. Basically what's gonna happen is it'll get mixed up with the sealer and also the reducer that goes with it. And this is going to be basically a thinned out primer, and that will allow us to get it on smoother and wetter, and we can base over it. When you mix this with this actual two additives here, what happens is it is building higher and is meant to sand. When you mix it with this, it is a sealer. And what a sealer is gonna do for you is it's the same color basically, but it mixed differently. And now we can go over all these little cut throughs. So we were able to get a little bit more aggressive with the blocking, and then the 500 grit sanding on a DA. And now at this point, we can use a sealer coat to give us a one uniform coverage instead of using base, and then we'll get out of our base coat in probably 2 or 3 coats minimum. Let's go ahead and start to apply our sealer coat. All right, so we're almost there. I've got a brand new tack rag that I've let air out. This has been airing out actually probably for a good 24 hours. I took it out yesterday. I wanted to make sure that it didn't have any sort of residue. And we're just gonna go over lightly our panels. Now what we're gonna be using is a static gun, not necessary for a do-it-yourselfer. And they're pretty expensive, guys. This one is $2,000, the Ion Star, but you won't find a better static gun than that. So basically what you wanna do is get everything nice and tacked. And then from there, we'll go over it with our static gun. So we're just going over the surface one last time, making sure there's no sort of areas that might be of concern. And then from there, we can go over our panel with the static gun. Now we're not using a lot of pressure, just very light pressure on the panel. And that's all it will take to pick up any last minute lint. That's all there is to it. All right, so we'll go ahead and get everything statically cleaned up. And this is the Ion Star static gun. Got a light there to let you know where it's at. And I'll kind of go on it like I'm painting the car. About a couple feet away from the surface is all it takes. And this helps to double by blowing down the car and getting any last minute debris on the surface. And this has been a game changer. I'm telling you, with all these different things we've done to keep this car clean, including the boot, the static gun, the wiping and everything, I'd be very surprised to get really any dirt in this paint job, because we've really gone all out to make sure that every dot is connected and no steps are missed. Now one thing you gotta be sure of when you're painting these doors, on these older cars, guys, you gotta know this. So basically up here, this is a vinyl film that goes over this. And basically now what's happened is you can't find, actually you can find it, but that film is $300 just for the film. And if you mess it up, forget about it. So I'm gonna paint this, sand it down, and then do a matte satin paint that's gonna match the rest of the trims. So that's gotta be nice and smooth. Also inside this door jamb on these older cars, they don't have the newer plastic cover that covers them. So all this edge is seamed. So make sure that you're getting this all up. It's not completely smooth from factory, but guys, you get some paint on it, because you don't wanna get the car done and there's no paint in these areas. We are ready to start sealing. We're using none other than the best sealer gun, the W400 WBX, and we're running a 1.4 tip. We're gonna start off on the hood, then we're gonna bring it down, bring it up and over, carry it on into the doors. Now for our sealer application, it is 100% necessary if you want proper hiding for your base coat and the best possible adhesion when doing a full paint job. When you're doing a full paint job, sealing is actually a really good idea if you have a lot of bare primer spots in different areas of the vehicle. If you got some slight burn throughs, sealer is going to be a great way to connect the dots and to make sure everything has one uniform coat before you paint. You might ask, do I need to seal my vehicle if I'm just doing a color change and you scuffed it up? Well, I'm going to always suggest that you do it, because you're going to save on paint and you're going to have a better paint job in the end. All new parts always get sealed, and that's just what we're doing here. Now, one of the things I love about sealing is I'm getting into the process of how to spray the car. I'm looking to find the best possible way, the best rhythm, the best way to attack this vehicle, and I'm using my sealer coat to do so. What is the best possible way that I'm going to have the most beautiful paint job and it's all going to be wet in the end? Where am I going to start? Where am I going to end? I realized right here in a moment that I need to make sure I don't take that paint too far on the A pillar and B pillar, and I need to get to the bottom of the car and bring that paint up and over. This way we have a nice, beautiful, soft edge that everything melts together. You've only got a good 30 to 1 minute, let's say 90 seconds worth of time to get that product to melt back in. So you want to make sure you're keeping that wet edge. A wet edge is the edge of the paint. Where it lies wet On the opposite side of that edge would be the dry, where there's no paint. So right there, where we're painting here in the middle of the roof, or towards the middle of the roof, right at the edge of that actual paint gun is the wet edge. And you can see right where that little hole is, where the nozzle goes, that would be the dry edge. So we have a dry edge right now at the edge in the middle of the roof. So we kind of need to be quick and jump around back to the other side of the car and pick up that wet edge within, let's say, 30 seconds to 90 seconds. You need to pick up that wet edge. With sealer, not a big a deal as clear coat. Clear coat is very important that you pick up that wet edge right away. And that's just what we're doing. We're continuing to bring it over the roof, and then we're going to bring it down the actual vehicle. And you need to listen to these videos. You need to go rewind them as much as you can and listen to what I'm saying when I'm saying it, because these are many years of experience, what I've taught myself to get the best possible results. Now, when we're doing our sealer coat, yes, you need to make sure that it is going on wet. You do not spray sealer dry. When you spray it wet, what happens is it goes on smoother. It might look a touch bumpy if you're doing it in your garage or if you have a little bit of dirt, but usually 9 times out of 10, it is going to smooth out nice and smooth, and there's no actual sanding of this sealer. If you're going to sand, what you're going to see here in a little bit, you're going to sand the base coat, because sealer is not meant to be actually sanded, okay? Sealer is just a thinned out, basically a thinned out primer. Now, that does not mean you can take your primer and over thin it. There are different ways to mix your sealer, as we showed you with different additives right before we sprayed this. So if you skipped around in the video, you're doing yourself a disservice. You need to watch the full video completely in order to get the best possible outcome, so you can understand all the products, how they work, and the techniques behind them. This is chemistry. Painting is chemistry, and if you do not listen or use the technical data sheets to learn how to properly apply product, you are not going to cheat chemistry, because in the end, chemistry is always going to win. Products are going to work the way they are designed, and they're not going to work the way that you want them to work. So make sure you're using them properly. Make sure we're getting full coverage and using our full fluid tips. This is a 1.4 fluid tip. You wouldn't want to starve the fluid with a 1.2 or a 1.3. I think a 1.4 is probably the best possible type of fluid tip for a sealer coat, and it really does lay it down smooth. We're going to go ahead on our doors, and we're applying the same exact product. We're doing everything the same exact time. Now, my booth's not big enough to fit the tailgate, so we're going to paint that tomorrow. I wanted everything to be painted within the same exact time period. If you're in your garage working and you cannot get everything painted at one time, paint one side at one time. Then the next day, paint the other side. But don't paint one side quarter panel on the passenger side and then paint the fender for the other side. You need to paint everything on the same side one day, because if you want the best possible outcome, especially on a metallic, weather plays a big part of that. Your technique plays a big part of it. Look at your actual PSI that you're spraying at, and making sure that everything that you're doing the next day is going to be the exact same thing that you did the first day. Well, that sealer went on fantastic. Do you see how well it covered? So now what we have is a beautiful coat of sealer that is ready for base coat, no burn throughs, a beautiful substrate, everything's looking good, everything went on perfectly, nice and smooth. At this point, we've waited 30 minutes, really let it dry up good, and we're going to be applying the base in the same exact way. I'm really happy with the body work. When the sealer is wet, you can check it out. And I'm glad I went with the new hood, because of a vehicle this old, you know, there's always something that you miss, and I don't want a lot of Bondo on the hood. So that one came out good. It was a great choice. We're going to go ahead and we're going to be using the Ion Star one more time in between coats. And then we're going to go ahead with our Vivid Blue, the first time it's touching the body, Vivid Blue Pearl on our RSX. Look at everything nice here and free of static. We already see a big difference on the sealer. Beautiful sealer, nice and smooth. Step 7, base coat application. Now, we chose to go with an original Vivid Blue OEM paint code for the Type S, and this would be B520P. I'll put that in the description. Now, how much paint do you need for your vehicle? I'm going to tell you that we are going to have about 2 gallons of reduced paint. So this paint mixes up 2 to 1. So this is going to be 2 gallons of reduced paint. And let me tell you why. We're using all the paint for the jams. We're doing all the paint for the body kit, all the paint for the bumpers, everything. So I mixed up 2 of these gallons, and that should be enough to cover everything entirely. We're now going to move into the spray booth. We're using a DeVilbiss DV1 1.3 to apply the paint. I bumped the pressure up to 18 psi. On this particular gun, it sprays at a lower pressure. We usually spray our blends and our paint in around 14 psi, but for an overall paint job, we need a little bit more speed, and we're going to be using 18 psi. The plan is to apply 2 full coats of base and check for coverage to see if it needs a third. Usually, I will tell you, get coverage plus 1 coat. In the middle of the hood, sometimes it can look a little bit stripey until it dries. Don't worry, get it on wet. The wetter you get it on, the smoother it will dry without stripes. And don't get too concerned right away. If you see something, just let it dry. We're now moving into the door jambs, and I learned from the sealer that I want to continue onto the bottom of the door jambs where there is not a whole lot of paint that needs to melt together. We're going to be coating the bottom side of the door jambs and then moving up and toward the quarter panel and carrying that color all the way around. I want you to pay attention to the technique I'm using throughout the video. Not only sealer, base coat, and clear will all be following the same technique of moving. There is a constant flow and a constant movement of paint onto the panel. We don't stop, look at a spot, and paint it. We actually continue moving with the paint, and this is how you need to paint a car. If paint stops in one area, you can potentially get a dry spot. And dry spots we don't want, because in base coat, especially with this even being a metallic, it can land gritty, it can land dry. So we want to make sure we're around 4 to 5 inches from the actual panel, and we're moving at a considerable speed watching the paint go on. You have 2 options when it comes to painting. You can either go at a little bit more of a distance from the panel and slower, or you can move in a little bit around 4 to 5 inches and move a little bit faster. I would probably tell you being a little bit closer and wetter is going to be the better option to follow. If you're a little bit further from the panel, what can happen sometimes is that paint will dry in the air before it hits the panel. Think about it. Your spray gun is atomizing your paint, and it's atomizing the paint with air. Air does what? It dries. So if the air is drying the paint, we want to make sure that it's not drying it quick enough before it gets to the panel. We want that panel to have wet paint on it, not dry spray. And that's exactly where the term comes from, dry spray. Allowing that air to really dry the paint before it hits the panel, or having improper distance to the panel will also cause dry spray. Similar to the sealer that you've watched earlier, we're following the same exact pattern with that wet edge. We can see here that we're going to split the roof into 2, and don't forget the areas that you don't see. It's very important before you start any paint job to assess areas that might be a little bit tight. Learn about them, study them, so when it comes to painting, you don't forget them. Painting can become overwhelming at times. Sometimes when you're painting, you can lose track of where you are. And this is the biggest struggle for any beginner painter. If you're a beginner painter, make sure you map out your paint job first. You don't want to start painting in one area and again start painting in another area, as mentioned before when spraying sealer. You want to map out your spray job so you keep that continuous wet edge. And also, advice, if you're a painter at home doing do-it-yourself jobs and you're painting your whole car, try to split it into 2 or 3 days. You don't need to get everything at once. Don't overwhelm yourself with a tough paint job. You can paint the roof one day, you can paint the driver's side another day, you can paint the passenger side another day. But regardless of what you do, develop a plan and stick to that plan. Now getting back to the vehicle here, you can see we carried the paint over the roof, and we're going to be coming down the inside of the jamb and into the C-pillar. And again, if you missed it, we have it between around 30 to 90 seconds to connect these 2 together. What happens is if you spray something and come back to it and try to put paint over it, what ends up happening is you have a dry spray in that area. So make sure you're moving efficiently. One thing I always like to do to make sure there's no downtime is I always have paint ready to go. I'll always have an extra little canister of paint in another cup, so I don't have to go mix it. It's already reduced, it's ready to go, there's no downtime. Don't ever enter into the booth thinking you might need something that's not in the booth already. Plan out your paint job when you're in the paint booth or in your garage and have everything always ready to go. There's nothing worse than having to go back and mix paint while you're in the middle of a paint job. It just slows down the progress. From here, we're ready to connect our colors together, and we're going to have, for the first time, the chassis is going to be one color. Don't forget those edges, because those edges can really show up in the bright sun, and that will end up being a redo. Now, one thing I probably should have done here is connect the color from the C-pillar all the way down, but since I was doing the door jamb and I'm still within those 30 to 90 seconds, I had enough time to work it back up to connect it. But you'll see when I go to clear coat it, I bring it up and over the roof and back down. On the next coats, I ended up going over the roof, over the C-pillar, and bringing it back down as well. But here, it really didn't affect things. One thing I really want to talk to you about is using the proper reducer. It's around 80 degrees in the paint booth, but I chose slow. I chose slow because I want the slowest possible reducer without being too slow. Now, extra slow is a great idea as well, but for blends. But for an all-over, slow is a great reducer to use. It's going to lay down the paint nice and smooth, and you're going to have a nice, beautiful, streak-free finish if you're applying the proper techniques with the spray gun. We also have extra slow reducer, but I like to use that for blends where I really need things to stay wet and I need that blend to look transparent. Now moving on to the rest of the panels. We had another RSX in the shop and I made sure to study it very closely to see what paint actually showed when a door is open. On newer vehicles, you'll have some panels that cover actually most top of the paint, and what I didn't want is you opening the door and seeing some dry spray. I wanted to make sure that I put enough paint where it needed to be so you didn't have any sort of light spots. Now, sticking with the idea of the build, taking it OEM++ and giving the inside of the door jambs where you'll never see a beautiful paint job. This is something that's not completely required, and a lot of you without these expensive stands, which run around $400 each, can simply just take your vehicle, take your door off, lay it flat, paint the inside one day, flip it over, mask it, and then paint the outside another day. It's not a big deal, but when we're doing a professional job here in the spray booth, you can get the best possible finish with wraparound clear on all the edges with absolutely no tape lines. But for you at home, if you're a do-it-yourselfer, you can still get a very similar result just by going ahead on the inside and doing it at separate times. As a do-it-yourselfer, I'm always going to tell you just to take it in steps and not try to get everything done at once. Moving along to the fenders and the gas cap, you can see that everything was completely taken apart for full, proper refinish. We're even going to be putting paint on the inside of the gas cap and the inside of the fenders. The inside of the fenders on nowadays really don't have any paint at all. If you look closely when you open up the door, you might find some E-coat right on the inside of that fender, and you'll find some E-coat sometimes even on the inside of the gas lid. They've really changed from back in the day when they used to put a lot more paint on these vehicles. Now they're just cutting costs as much as they can, but that's not what we're doing with this build. Let's go ahead and finish things up as we lay down the rest of this base. Step 8, scuffing the base coat. And it's daylight and we're back here the next morning, and guys, it is looking good. And this is something I really wanted to do, is let this paint really cure up. We're gonna be giving it a light sand, and this is not necessary, but it's definitely gonna take this paint job to another level in smoothness. I've also noticed a couple areas where we may have been a little bit too aggressive, and it might catch up on camera right here. You can see it just a little bit. Those are some of the blocking marks. So this light sanding is gonna help just even out some of that little streakiness that I have in this area. And you can see it in this area as well. When the clear hit that, I probably wouldn't see it, but I wanna make sure it's not there. And I haven't noticed it really anywhere else except for the tighter areas. Maybe in this area, I've noticed A couple small little lines in this area where it's a little bit odd to actually block. But other than that, we're gonna focus the DA in that area and then just lightly over the whole surface of the vehicle. Now, some folks might say, why are you sanding in the booth? Yeah, I agree, I understand, but at the end of the day, we are going to be completely doing a light sand to make this car cleaner. That's what's gonna happen. We've done everything we need to do in the booth to get a clean, nice finish. So we're gonna use a Milwaukee 3/32 rotation sander. You can see that right in that area, 3/32. We're also going with Kovacs Eagle Abrasives. It's their yellow black interface pad. It's kind of firm, so that would give us a nice contact to the actual panel itself. And we're going with that 3/32 DA sander. The 3/16 a little bit more for body work. DA sander is nice and clean in the booth, and that's what we want. Let me show you how it works. Basically just slap that on here, and we got on the lowest speed right now. And we're just basically lightly, this is all we're doing, guys. We're not trying to kick up really any dust. We're just trying to go over that surface lightly, and that's all we need to do. And when you do this, it will reveal kind of where the line is from the blocking mark, and then you could just stop once that kind of line goes away, just like that. Now what I'll do before I move on is I'll go ahead and wipe it. Fresh microfiber, some water-based cleaner from the beginning when we were going to wipe down the vehicle, and that's all there is to it, guys. And after that's been dry, we can see that all of them are gone except for in this area. There's just a little bit more, and this was that tough edge to block out that got a little bit more aggressive with the block itself, and it's no problem. These can be easily fixed. They are not deep into the paint. So again, just a little bit of K600 on the DA, and basically that's all you need to do. So when we put base right over this, it's not too aggressive where it can't cover it, and it's aggressive enough that it's actually making a difference in the finish. And these are the small things you can do before you finish up your base in order to really set your paint job apart. On this side, it got the similar type of lines again. And it was only really, I noticed in this body area where you couldn't really get a DA too flat. And that will happen sometimes. The one thing you can't do is notice that you haven't noticed it, all right? Or do nothing about it. The one thing you should never do is just leave it, all right? If you got the opportunity to fix something, fix it. Take your time. We can see here, there's just a little bit of a line that still remains. So just lightly go over that. And again, clear would fill this in, but in the end, it could swell up a little bit and you could buff it, so might as well get it right now. That's why this sage is so important if you're planning on getting a really, really immaculate paint job. Now I took the fender outside so we won't have any dust going into the booth. And again, I noticed this really on tough contours, something that might have not needed as much blocking as it got. And sometimes that aggressive scratch can still be there if you didn't refine it. We could have refined it. That's how we could have spent a little bit more time refining this in order to get it to the point where you're not seeing anything. But sometimes you don't notice anything until paint, you know. Obviously, if we noticed it before, we would have taken care of it. But to avoid this, probably just a little bit more refining with the guide coat. But this is no big deal, honestly. This is sometimes just a part of the process, especially if you're home doing something like this, giving it a nice little sand down. Really gonna see the big results when it comes to your final finish, which we'll show you here once we finish up. Once we clear it, it's gonna look fantastic. Now let's just say that you didn't have any of those issues and you're just doing a basic scuff. You would use the K800. Now we're not looking to really get on it aggressive. The K800 is gonna be a perfect choice when it comes to giving a light scuff. And we finished all of our K600, our rougher areas that need a little bit more attention. And with this, all we're doing, guys, we're basically 1 or 2 passes over, and that's all there is to it. We don't want to burn through, because if we burn through, we're gonna have to put more base on it. We're looking for any sort of like little dirt nib. We find a little dirt nib, we can go over it. And this is gonna be one less dirt nib that we have when it comes to polishing out in the end. And especially on these flat surfaces, we can take as least amount of dirt as possible. And basically, we'll just finish up here. And it's literally just as simple as going 1 or 2 passes, looking, making sure you don't have anything. I'm not even gonna get that low. I don't wanna burn through a body line that low, doesn't matter. Basically want our car to be as dustless as possible after it's cleared. And this is gonna give you the advantage. It's a little bit more time, but buffing is a lot more time too. Basically what we're gonna do is we're gonna use our blower, very, very low blowing speed, and just kind of move all the dust and overspray too from last night painting. That gets caught up everywhere too. That turns to dust when it dries. So we're gonna get this whole car blown off again, blow everything out, and then we'll start with the cleaning process of wiping down the vehicle to get the best possible finish before we base. Now the car is all completely blown off and the floor is, we'll apply, again, our dust control to the floor. And it's kind of like a soapy water. It holds down the, it holds down any dirt, and you always want to reapply. It's a great product. And we use it all the time, and again, on the stands, the lower parts of the stands. And that just really helps keep everything on the ground and not in your paint job. You can see we got a pretty clean paint job already. And that's all there is to it, guys. Final step is going back to that original step. All we're gonna do is just wipe it down. You could use a tack rag. The reason why I like using the water base and the microfibers, because there is some residue that we wanna make sure that we're pulling off the panel. And when we use a little bit of water-based cleaner, what that does is it helps get it off of the panel and into the rag instead of just using a regular tack rag. Now before we base just these areas, you might ask, why do you even sand if you're gonna put base back on it? Won't you have to sand again? And if you sand, can you just clear right over it? No. The reason why we sand is because we put the sealer down. The sealer really attracts a lot of dirt sometimes, and it's a little bit thicker coat. So you can't sand sealer, so you put on a couple coats of base, get your full coverage, just about, and then you can lightly scuff that, what we did here. At this point, there's no more sanding unless we have some area that we really need to look at. But there's no more sanding at this point. We're basing or going all the way through to clear. But before we do that, we're gonna touch up our areas first to get coverage in our sanded areas. And that's all there is to it, just like that. So we got sanded areas covered, and now what we're gonna do, let this dry. We'll maybe get another coat on here before it gets up to the same exact coveredness as the rest of it, and then we can go ahead with the whole rest of the vehicle, one final coat. Now before the last coat, you need cheap insurance, and this is like a $60 Astro Sunlight gun. And I'm telling you, the problem with blue, using that blue sealer, is without the lights on in the sun gun or the sunlight gun, you do not know where it's light. See, since you got that blue backing, and that's the only downfall for this color build, is that you aesthetically look at it and you think it's covered because it looks fine. But when you turn the lights off and you use this light, it's gonna show you, is it really covered? Now, I've already gone and I've touched up the spots that have not been covered, but I just wanna show you that this is exactly how you need to look at a car before you do the final base and the final clear, to verify you don't have any light spots from where you sand it, to verify you got all your edges. You will not be able to see it until it's too late. In here, I had to do some touch up. In here, it was a little bit light. It wasn't the true color, all right? You can even see in here, it's a little bit light, but I'm not too worried about the door hinge. But that's what we're talking about. Generally inside there, it'll be a little bit lighter, but we got good coverage. But you just really do not, again, want to be in a rush. You're looking everywhere. I mean, you have to look in spots where you're going to see the car later on the lift and be like, ah, man, I wish I would have got that. Look, over in here, we have to get every single spot on the car has to thoroughly be looked at. Another area where there'll be issues is right in here on these door edges. You paint the door this way and then you paint the jamb, but you never get the edge, you know, so that's a very important spot as well. Even on the edges down in here, you need to check everything. I cannot be more consistent in saying it. I see I have a little bit of a light edge. Can't really see it, but it's a little bit of a light edge right in here. I need to put some base there before I do that final coat. I can see it right there. It's a little bit light. So I'll put that base up on there, miss that one spot, and then we're gonna get everything one full coat, but I'm gonna talk to you about that one full coat. We're ready for the final coat of base. Now, before I paint this car, I reached out and talked to all my best buddies, and I talked to Candyman, and he gave me the best advice that I am currently, right now in this moment, going to use is once you've got everything sanded, then at this point, what you gotta do is don't go and do the jams. They have full coverage. Don't do the jams on the doors or anything like that. We only want to do the outside, okay? Because what happens is he's telling me is if you start painting here, all that overspray comes over on the front side, and what it's going to do is it's going to change the color, all right? Because the metallic, there's a metallic in here, it will change the color. So we've got everything covered on the inside, so now we're going to come on the front sides only. That's all we need to do. The front sides is going to be the last coat. We have really 99% coverage, but we just want to make 100% sure that everything is nice and even, and that's the reason why we're doing this. So we're going to follow it up with that third coat. Now keep in mind that the second coat was done off camera the night before, and this would be the third coat. So 3 coats in total, and that's what it took to get this thing fully covered, to get to the correct shade that we chose. We chose the lightest shade variant of Vivid Blue. There's about 10 different variances, and I love the shade that we actually chose. Well, here it is. 30 minutes later, we have allowed everything to completely dry, and man, it is super smooth. The steps we took this morning in order to get a nice smooth finish and to really handle any of the defects that we saw have really paid off, because this thing is looking great. Now, from this point, you have the choice of using the tack rack, which we have lightly gone over the car, and then we're going to be using the Ion Star to reduce any sort of static as a last method procedure. Step 9, clear coat application. Let's talk about the clear. This is probably one of my more favorite clears to use. We're using the PC. This clear, I like it because it gives a little bit more of that nice factory finish. I want a factory style finish on this vehicle, and that's why we're going with the PC. Now, over here, I've already preloaded 2 22-ounce cups of clear. That way, when I have one done, I don't have to come back in. Always go into the booth, ready to go. And we're going to be using none other than the Series 2 Iwata WS400. This thing's going to lay down the clear, and this thing's going to look beautiful. I run this thing at 26 PSI, and I have this wide open, and I have the fan 2 turns in from the left from wide open. Let's go ahead and start laying it down. Now you can see how important it is to use the Ion Star static gun, or any static gun for that matter. If you're looking for a really clean job and you're a professional painter, I really strongly suggest it. If you're a do-it-yourself painter, I would not. It is too expensive for do-it-yourself folks that mainly probably are going to be anyways buffing, sanding and polishing anyways. So you can tell that a lot goes into the process, from cleaning the hose to making sure that your floor is clean to making sure your environment is clean. Everything goes into the process of getting a clean paint job. Now, there's no clean paint job without dirt. There'll always be something or a little bit of orange peel, but nothing that a buffer cannot handle. And that's exactly what we have here. In the next episode too, you'll see how to handle just very minor imperfections to make sure you can take your paint job to the next level. Now again, we're using our WS400, and we're having it at 26 PSI, and we can see when we lay it down, we're following around an 80% overlap, and the clear just lays on it. If you have a smooth foundation, think about it, your smooth foundation has come from the very initial steps. The very initial steps of sanding, to the sealer, to the base, to the clear coat. If none of those are smooth, the clear coat is just going to highlight how not smooth it is. Now remember that your clear coat might look good going on, it might look nice and even, but depending on what is underneath it, once it dries, it's going to shrivel up and dry into whatever unevenness is around it. Now this is PC high solids clear, and remember what high solids means. Basically, the amount of solids that are in the clear after it dries on the panel. So a lot of that is going to come out of the clear coat when it dries, right? What is actually staying on the panel. So that's a good way to really judge your clear coat. Is it a high solids clear coat? What is actually going to be on the vehicle once everything is dry? Because everything comes out once it dries. Like, clear coats have the chemicals in them. They need it to get the clear coat to the panel, right, to come out of the spray gun. But once it dries, what is actually still going to be on there, which is why you pay the high dollar for some of these actual clear coats. I mean, this kit can be very, very expensive. PPG, a lot of different clear coats are very, very expensive. But why would you work for, let's say, 3 or 4 months on a vehicle and then put a cheap clear coat on it? Just for it to have delamination issues or to fade prematurely or not be able to buff it or polish it properly. That's something to think about when it comes to choosing a clear coat. Now, you can see how the application of the clear coat, we're just moving. Don't stop moving. And I told you from sealer to base coat to clear, we're following the same exact technique. We're keeping that wet edge. Here is when the wet edge is the most important. If you do not have a wet edge on clear coat, you will have dry spray. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. You will see it highlighted the most on clear coat. And you don't want that because clear coat sometimes, if you don't have enough material, you cannot buff it. There's something to be said about polishing and cutting flat. If you don't have enough clear on there and you're sanding and polishing it flat, it might look good, but what are you really leaving on the panel? Here's what I was after on this paint job. I want it for myself to have the OEM feel to it. I wanted that OEM texture. There's nothing like having an unsanded panel, because the unsanded panel, once you cut into that clear, it's never the same. So we wanted to do our best to really catch on spots only, to polish spots and little areas instead of doing the whole entire car. Once you cut the whole car completely flat, you're taking away the integrity of that clear coat. Now, let's just say that's something that you might not have an option to do if you're spraying in an environment that there might be a little bit more dirt. I completely understand that. But if you're in a professional environment, there's no excuse not to take the necessary steps to get yourself a clean paint job. And again, I talked to you about base, always having the extra base coat if you need it, and the clear coat is even more important. You can see I'm all ready to go. I'm locked and loaded. And this, believe it or not, only got me to finish up the vehicle. I had to reload later for the rest of the doors, but since it's panels, it doesn't matter as much. You never want to run out of paint when you're in the middle of a panel, to go back into the mixing room or wherever you're at and mix it. And you know, when you are doing something in a hurry, something always happens. You're going to drop the cup. You're not going to seal the PPS lid on top of the liner properly. It's going to come out. You need to make sure you set yourself up for success. And these are the simple things that any normal person can do that doesn't have experience, right? You don't have to have experience in this field to do the simple stuff. The simple stuff like cleaning, the simple things like getting yourself set up, the simple thing like making sure that your tape is taped down, making sure you don't have any loose ends. Those are all the simple things. Painting can be difficult, but the catchphrase is don't overthink it, it's just paint. And the reason why I say that to you all, if you've been following me for a while, is you already know how to do a paint job. You already know that in a paint job, these are the methods you're going to use. And if it doesn't work, it's very easy to figure it out. It's very easy to find out what went wrong. And 99% or 9 times out of 10, it's user error. And that's what I've discovered. It's user error. You want to blame the product, don't blame the product. It's user error. And watching these videos and other YouTubers' videos and just getting out in your garage and practicing, you're going to gain the knowledge that you need to be able to clear coat. And here we are, and I took it into the door jamb. I talked to you earlier about how I started back at the bottom of that quarter panel, and I'm not doing that here. You can see I'm just finishing up on the C-pillar, and I'm going to be wrapping it around and bringing it all the way down into the door. So we have that one nice wet run. And that's basically what a paint job is. You've heard that expression before. The best paint job is like one big drip or one big run. So basically what we're doing is we're connecting the dots. We're connecting all of our areas that have that dry spray or that dry edge from the wet edge, and we're connecting them and making them whole. And we only have a certain amount of time to do that. If you haven't been following the video, about 30 to 90 seconds to do that before it might not mesh in, depending on what reducers you're using. Now, this clear coat, this is PC, this is slow, but it's not the slowest, but it's definitely a slower. The reason why I like it is because of the texture that it leaves, and it on other clears that you have from Sikkens, like the 2-pack slow. It's beautiful clear, but that one will run on you if you're not careful. And I just love the way this one lays out. I'm gonna let you guys sit back and listen to the sounds of the spray gun as we finish up the door, and then we'll pick it back up on this second coat. Guys, this is after one coat. It's been drying for at least 20 minutes from the time I started to the time I got all the way to the other side. It is a lot of work to paint a car, I will tell you. But wow, the result of what we've done to get to this point has worked. The smoothness of the paint, I'm gonna tell you something, we have like basically no trash really in this whole entire job. There might be a few nibs here and there, but this is a clean job. Not a beautiful flat finish yet, but that's exactly how you want your first coat to look. A nice tack coat, not tack coat, medium wet. not dry, I don't want to say tack coat, but really ready for that second coat. We can lay it on a little bit wetter on that second coat, but not too wet because we don't want any runs. We want this to really have that factory style finish. We want to trick a lot of people into thinking that this was an original car, and I think we could do it. I think we can do it. But check it out, guys. Looking really good all around. Happy with all the body work. As perfect as we could possibly do, and there's a lot of pride in that. So we're gonna go on a second coat. Let's go ahead and lay it down. Look at this. Look at this finish, guys. I barely have to put a buffer on this. This is a fantastic, beautiful finish. Really happy. 2 coats. Beautiful clear. We're gonna allow this to dry. Probably we're gonna let this sit in the booth for the rest of the day. We're not gonna take it out to the next day. Just check it out. Complete gloss everywhere. I mean, everywhere you look, this thing is gloss completely out, and there's nothing like it. I gotta say, I'm really happy, really happy. No need to take off any sort of tape at this point, because as we mentioned earlier in the video, there is no areas that are bridging, and everything is nice and smooth. And wow, look at completely everywhere is glossed out. Even, guys, check this out, the back of the doors. The back of the doors are glossed out perfectly. Really happy with that. Fender over here and gas cap good to go. So the best thing that we can do at this point, literally, is get out of the booth and let this dry. We've got a clean job at this point, and we'll see you guys back here once we go to unmask it. So we're back here the next day. Man, this thing is looking good. It held a gloss. It looks really shiny. Didn't pitch up anywhere, and it's still looking like a vehicle that I can be really proud of. But what we're gonna do is we're gonna go ahead and get this all unmasked. It's ready to go. It's dry. It's nice and dry. I always get nervous touching new paint, but yeah, it's dry. Everything's looking good. No runs. And we are ready to get this back into the shop to start the building process. Once we get to that hump, I'll come and move it. It is definitely the right blue. Yeah. And on the next episode, we're gonna get all the panels back onto the vehicle as we start to button up this Project RSX. We'll complete all of the wiring as well as showing you some simple techniques to remove small paint flaws in your finish. We'll also show you some very fine grit sanding on how to polish your vehicle as you buff it up to a mirror shine on the next episode of Paint Society.